Byte Club, welcome to a very special debut for a new series we are doing here on Byte that called Debate That. Now, why are we doing this? If you think about the world of wrestling, whether it be a match, a feud, a storyline, something that is happening, everything's debatable. Everybody has a different perspective, a different opinion. So Debate That is going to be a platform, a formatted show where we can have both sides of the same story. So what's going to happen is I'm going to be the role of moderator. Keith is going to play topic perspective A, and then Ryan is going to play topic perspective B. Now, the challenge is they both sent me 3 topics apiece, and they have no idea what the topic for this is going to be. So I'm going to pick the topic.
True.
I'm going to say which person should be for and which one should be against the topic. They're going to get a little bit of time to prepare, so we're going to cut that out. And then we're going to get the conversation started. It's going to be first, they're going to present their argument, and then the counter argument. So they're going to shoot at each other verbally. You guys scared about this?
And I am going to do everything in my power to not just relentlessly make master debater jokes the entire time. That is my promise to you.
By you saying that, I'm pretty sure that already means we went back on that. But, you know.
Yeah, I'm already coming in at a disadvantage. If anyone's seen the year-end awards, Juan seems to always side with Keith on pretty much anything, so we'll see what happens.
I really am going to do my best to play devil's advocate in this. Like in other videos, we go crazy, but I'm really curious about your argument. So the topic for this video is going to be based on the list Keith sent me. So the future video will be the one including Ryan's topics. And the topic at hand is the following. Inside wrestling terminology, as fans, is it okay for us to throw it around as much as we do? So this is talking about heel, babyface, kayfabe, that terminology. Should it be acceptable that we as wrestling fans say that, or should we save that for the superstars? So, who's going to be for and who is going to be against? Keith has got to be against this, and Ryan has to be for wrestling fans using wrestling terminology. So now you guys are going to have about a minute or two to get your arguments ready, and then we'll be right back. And the time has concluded to get ready for your arguments. So first, we're going to start with the positive route. So I'm leaving things to Ryan McNulty, who's going to present the argument as to why wrestling fans should be allowed to use wrestling terminology in everyday life about wrestling.
All right, so for why fans should be able to use wrestling terminology, I live in the United States of America, and there is a thing called freedom of speech. So I should be able to say whatever I want, and just because I don't work in the business doesn't mean that I should be barred from using things in terminology. Some things are just easier to say by using wrestling terminology, you know, saying like a crowd popped for that. Or, you know, if you say heel or face, it's just easy. It's easier to explain certain things. Heel turn, instead of saying, oh, he was a bad guy and he turned to a good guy. You say, oh, he turned face. It's just a little bit easier to explain certain things faster. It's just more convenient. Other sports and other mediums have kind of insider terminology. I'm sure acting, they have phrases that they use. Sports have tons of things, you know, tons of things to explain what they do if they're doing a curl route in football or something. And it's only wrestling that seems to have this issue with, oh, they're using our terms, they're using our words. And even if, and I think the big issue with wrestlers who are against fans using the terminology is that it's often misused or misunderstood. And even if they are misusing it at times, it's still fun for the fans to be to feel like they're in the know, to feel like they've kind of got this inside knowledge. And at the end of the day, fans drive the wrestling business. So if to make them feel included is a positive, not a negative, even if they're getting it wrong sometimes and that annoys the wrestlers. It's a minor inconvenience to wrestlers at the end of the day. What does it really hurt when they use wrestling terminology to a wrestler? It's just, oh, they don't actually know what they're talking about. Is that really that harmful to anybody? I don't think so.
Well, so Ryan making some excellent points. The main ones being freedom of speech, that it is easier to explain. Other sports do have
the main
terminology.
one being America.
America, and that it is fun to be aware of the terms as a wrestling fan. It almost makes you feel included. So Ryan, thank you for your argument for that. And now we go to the opposite side of the coin with Keith as to why we shouldn't use those terms.
All right. So this is something that I'm actually personally very against. I admit that I do end up getting caught in it sometimes, but I just think it's a crutch that people use when trying to explain things to be convenient to them. Like, I'll go on a message board and see oh, this guy's not getting over. This guy's getting over. This guy doesn't have heat. It just makes you seem like you're trying to be, I don't know if smarter than you are is the right word or the right way to put it, but you're just using terminology for the sake of using it. Like Ryan mentioned that, just saying oh, this guy has heat. Why not just say this guy gets booed or something like that? Or, oh, hey, that resonated with the crowd. There's no need to really just throw these terms around when there's other ways to explain it. Yes, it makes you feel like you are in the know. It makes you feel like you are part of something, but just being a fan can also do that as well. There's really no need. If anything, you're sheltering people, you're sheltering people away from the conversation. You're moving it in a direction where not everybody can be involved. Because if somebody's not in the know, they're not going to know what a heel is. They're not going to know what a face is. They're going to think that this is a face, not John Cena. John Cena has a face. I guess people really like the way John Cena looks or something like that. It's not inclusive, and I really think it goes against the fundamentals of creating a conversation by shutting people out. And we need, as fans, we need to do it less. I don't think that's saying it, using it every now and then is a bad thing, but just to lean on it so much is where the issue lies.
Both of you make very compelling arguments. So to recap, Keith, you're saying that people on primarily the internet use this terminology, and it makes some people, not everybody, seem like they're trying to be smarter. There are other words that can be used that don't have to be babyface or heel. Other people are going to be lost. So say you're a wrestling fan and you're talking about this, but then there's somebody that just watches sports next to you. That person may be very lost. So it's not inclusive. So both of you have the argument of the people around you, right? It's fun to be aware, but it's also fun to maybe use different words. So that has been the first part. Now, Ryan, do you want to make any counter arguments or add anything based on what either you said before you want to complete or what Keith just talked about?
Yeah, I just think the wrestling business shouldn't be in the business of worrying about what people say, or at least what terminology they're using. Like I said, even if it's misunderstood or misguided, it's still if people are using wrestling terminology and someone goes, hey, what are you talking about? Oh, I'm talking about wrestling. Well, maybe that's promoting wrestling more. And what does it matter if they say, oh, he's getting booed or, he's got a lot of heat? Most of the time, if you're on a wrestling message board where is the likely place you're going to see this, people get what you're talking about, or they're going to go look it up and find out what you're talking about. So using one word or using the other, I think it's fine. Either one is fine. If I say he's got heat or he's getting booed, the point is getting across. And I think it's more about that than worrying about the actual word that's being used. Let's worry about the message that's being sent.
But what does it actually accomplish besides just a personal ego stroke of knowing what that term means?
Well, save that. Save that.
By
You're breaking the rules. There are rules in this Byte.
I thought we were at point counterpoint now.
No, okay, but Ryan's counterpoint is people just want to know. We shouldn't have to worry about directly which words are said or not said, because as long as you understand each other as wrestling fans, then that's what matters, right? So do you have a counterpoint specifically to that or anything that you want to add to it, Keith?
Or like I just mentioned, what's the besides a personal ego stroke of knowing what that means and being able to use it, what does it actually accomplish? Instead of saying, oh, he's got heat.
Because right now you're just throwing it back to Ryan. But as you being the person that is against that, don't pose the question. What is your reasoning for that? Aside from that,
it's an extra layer as far as keeping people in the know. Ryan made a good point about it being hey, if you're going to a message board, you're probably going to be with people that are in the know. So that's probably a good place for it, but it still seems less inviting to have all of these terms, and it's always just seems so much just like I mentioned, a personal ego stroke where you're saying things just because you know what they mean, and there's just better ways to explain it, I guess.
Now, I actually have some questions for both of you. I'm going to start out with Keith since you're just talking about this.
Okay.
Considering we hear wrestlers in the network, in shoot interviews, say these terms all the time, why should we be against that, considering that they are not just saying that behind the scenes, they're saying it in DVDs that you can buy, they're saying it in interviews, they're saying it in podcast episodes. So it's not just this behind the scenes thing, but it's become a part of just wrestling culture, not wrestler culture.
I think that's where the divide lays, because they're allowed to, in the way that they're in the business, they're in the know, they're behind the scenes, they get to use those terms. We as fans, we love looking behind the scenes, and I do think it promotes it, but I'm not necessarily saying that's a good thing either. The fact that the wrestlers are just throwing it around so loosely in podcasts and stuff. It is promoting it, and there is something to be said about them using it so loosely, and then there is a backlash when people come back at them. I think that is also an issue in itself.
So then, Ryan,
maybe they should stop too.
So Ryan, I have a question for you then.
Mm-hmm.
When you watch a movie, you don't talk about a heel turn as a character is killing somebody, right? It's common for a movie to accept what's happening as part of a script. You don't think about the script as you're watching the movie. I hope I make sense with that. There are good characters and bad characters. Does it ruin the magic in wrestling, considering that we would then be so aware, so much using these inside terms, that whenever you watch on TV, as a result of us saying all these terms, whenever somebody kicks somebody's ass, like you look at a Dolph Ziggler, swinging a chair to Apollo Crews and Kalisto, instead of just going, oh man, look at that action, we instead go, oh, they finally turned him heel. Does using that terminology then damage and make that type of situation occur more than it should?
I don't think the terminology really affects it in any way. Granted, the wrestling business is one where we look behind the scenes more than most other things, but that just happens to be the nature of wrestling. I don't think saying the word heel turn makes the illusion go away any less than just recognizing the cyclical nature of wrestling, right? We see these patterns over and over again. It doesn't matter what words we use. We recognize these patterns. So whatever word we use is fine. We're going to figure it out anyway. So I don't think the terminology is the biggest factor in this. We're looking behind the scenes regardless.
So as we reach the end here, I want both of you to make a 20 to 30 second closing argument. If you want to immediately captivate somebody, almost an elevator pitch of why you should or should not be for this, I'm going to then start it with Keith, considering Ryan was the one that began all this.
Okay. So yeah, it shuts people out. It's saying things for the sake of saying them. You can explain it in a more inclusive way. You don't need to say babyface. You don't need to say heel. You can say good guy and bad guy. It takes away some of the magic. Instead of saying, oh, this guy turned his back on him, you're saying, oh, this guy's going over, and I guess this guy's going over on Dolph Ziggler or something like that. There's just no need for it. There's much better ways to explain it.
All right, well, I just don't actually understand what having wrestling fans stop using wrestling terminology really accomplishes, aside from just easing the egos of wrestlers, or maybe they just feel better that they got their own little world that nobody else is in. I don't see any actual positive benefit. The benefits I see of wrestling fans finding out these terminologies just makes it more fun to be a wrestling fan.
So both of you have I got to applaud you guys because this is the first time we ever did something like this, and I wasn't sure.
Yay!
So I like this topic because I know that both of you do feel strongly about what you've actually been saying. So for me, who do I think made the more convincing argument? I think both of you really did an excellent job about that, but I'm actually going to have to go with Ryan for this. Because of the WWE Network, because of the podcast, bringing on primarily like somebody like Jericho, because like we can produce a wrestling podcast, which we do, but it's not like it's within the WWE bubble. But here's Jericho, somebody that is in WWE, and he talks about all this. I mean, hell, like after storylines, he may sometimes even talk about it the week after or a couple of days after. So it's almost like it's self-aware. You look at it up, down, where it's Austin Creed, not
Stone Cold
Xavier Woods.
in his podcast using terminology all the time.
Exactly. So do I think that it's cool that it is like that? I actually don't. So in that sense, I would agree with Keith. But because, hell, they already do it. Whether we want to accept it or not, in 2016 to in 2017, that's what's happening. So I'm going to have to give Ryan the victory for the first edition of Debate That. Now, it's all about you guys.
Congratulations, sir.
Congratulations, Ryan. And those watching, who do you think made the more convincing argument, and which side of the coin are you actually on? We really want to know because I personally had a hell of a time listening to each perspective here. So feel free to also suggest different topics that could make for a great debate that video. We are going to have a second one based on a list that Ryan sent me, so stay tuned to that in the future. We have the podcast available every single Wednesday night here right on YouTube, as well as a variety of different other platforms. If you want to go one step further and support what it is we do directly, you can go over to patreon.com/Byte That. You can get early access, exclusive behind-the-scenes updates. If you become a Gold Patreon supporter, your name will be on the end video graphic of the VidMe and the YouTube videos, as well as your name, regardless of how much you pledge, will be permanently embedded onto our website, which is bytethat.com. That's the place where you can get a lot more information. So thank you guys so much, and it's going to keep getting heated because these debates are going to keep happening on Byte That.
Will there be a face or heel turn? Do you think somebody will go over?
Oh man, I think Ryan went over.
What kind of heat are we gonna get?
I went over, baby.
Yeah.